Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I will be sharing a little bit about improving health and productivity of Western soils. I am Associate Professor of Cropping Systems and Soil Health at New Mexico State University. Now, my work is working on soil carbon, soil nutrient, soil health assessment and management in arid and semi-arid agroecosystems. So I will be basically sharing my experience working on these, dry, arid and semi-arid regions of Western United States. So before going to, the region-specific information, I might want to give you a recap of soil health, which indicates continued capacity of soil to function in a given ecosystem boundary. And when we talk soil health, it emphasizes holistic approach of looking at soil and then managing them for their physical, chemical, and biological processes and properties in the soil. For example, if you look at physical component is working right, biology is working right, and chemical properties are working right. Now that soil is called healthy soil. For example, here our ideal situation is looking at this condition where physics, chemistry, and biology all work together. But sometimes we get confused and ask, like, what is the difference between traditional fertility approach and then this soil health approach in managing soil? In fertility approach, previous approach, most of the focus was in chemistry, like making the chemistry right, making the nutrients available for plant growth. But now we learn that the physics and biology is also important. Specifically, biology regulates this physical and chemical processes. Then on the approach where we look at soil health, looking at the role of biology and looking at how these organic inputs regulate the biological process and then how they regulate overall soil processes. So I would walk you through this process, like in the soil ecosystem, when any plant litter, animal waste, or other biological products like organic residues in any form, like dead plant and animal residues, rhizole deposits, or added organic amendments get into the soil, then the first reaction is from biological community. They decompose those organic material and then release nutrients. So that way, it regulates the soil biology, regulates nutrient cycling and availability process. And on that process, these microorganisms, which include bacteria, fungus, different kind of actinobacteria, these organisms also respire and then release carbon dioxide. But that part of that material also goes into soil organic matter, stored as a the fixed carbon into the soil, and that way it regulates both organic matter cycling and greenhouse gas emission. Now, how much of that cycle is more conservative? That means like how much of the material is conserved in the soil as organic matter, and how much is lost into atmosphere as a greenhouse gas. That is also regulated by microbial community. And then the third function, when you have organic matter stored into a soil, that organic matter helps serves as a building block for better soil structure. When you have a better soil structure, the water and air can move freely into the soil, and then that improves water holding capacity, improves infiltration capacity of soil, and then regulate water cycling, and then which is related to soil erosion by water. So regulating this microbial community and organic matter combinations, this cycle regulates a lot of processes in soil. This is just an example. So when we look at soil health approach in managing soil, our emphasis is either looking into organic matter storage or regulating soil biological community so that nutrient cycling is better, water cycling is better, and then that ultimately leads to better production and sustainability of our agriculture. But when we come to western half of the United States, this process sometimes becomes challenging because our this environment in the western half of the United States is mostly dry environment. You can see the arid systems here, and then most of the semi-arid region, except this coastal area, you see less than 500 millimeter precipitation, or this is less than 18 or 20 inch of precipitation region. And that precipitation, when you have less rain or snow, less water in the system, that limits plant biomass production, that limits organic residue decomposition. That really limits this formation of organic matter and limits biological activity of soil organisms. So that is the major driver of soil health or major constraint in soil health management in this region. So our this presentation will focus how these different practices work on this kind of water limited, dry, and then specifically, I have a lot of examples from New Mexico, this region. So dry and hot environment, how this soil biology works, how organic matter storage, how this dynamics works, we'll discuss. Then I also summarize, challenges we face on this region, over last century. When we started cultivation, I look at data from different long-term studies, some of them done by myself, and then some of coming from previous experiments. Like when we started cultivation in the prairie type of system, grassland dominated system in Western United States, half of the organic matter, or more than half of the organic matter, was lost in first 50 years of cultivation. And then this process kind of continued in some other part of the country. For example, in 2015, I worked in a long-term experiment, 80 years of data from Pendleton, Oregon. On that study, we found, most of the experiment, like winter wheat fallow system, lost more than 50%, almost like 60% of organic matter stored in the profile in first 80 years. And then another with, this first system used residue burning. This one without residue burning, also almost like 50% loss of organic matter. But there was one treatment that maintained soil organic matter in the system, was with manure application. This is manure. They applied composted beef cattle manure, and then those treatments were able to maintain soil organic carbon. And when I moved to New Mexico, I look at similar kind of situation. We did not have long-term data in eastern New Mexico here, but I look at dryland conventional tillage fallow, dryland no tillage fallow, irrigated tillage fallow, and native grass system. This native grass, which is undisturbed for more than 65 years, so that has highest amount of soil organic matter storage. And if we compare that field with this dryland conventional till fallow field, more than 50% of carbon was lost on this system as compared to native grass. If we look at irrigated system, even in the irrigated field, almost like 30% carbon is lost as compared to native grass. So that shows, all across this arid and semi-arid region, we lost a significant amount of organic matter. And then that organic matter is food for microbial community to regulate this nutrient cycling, water cycling, and then other processes in the soil that makes an ideal environment for better crop growth. So when organic matter is lost, you can see both diversity and population of microbial community is decreased. Then when it decreased, overall function, few metabolic pathway to regulate this organic matter, and then that means like less amount of nutrient is released into the system, and then low contributing to low nutrient availability for crop production. And then when, if we follow some practices that increase diversity, that increase, diverse metabolic pathway, release more organic matter, more nutrients, and then water holding capacity is increased, and ultimately supporting crop production. So if we look at the relationship organic carbon or organic matter and crop yield, you can see a linear trend. If we increase organic content, crop yield is also increased. Not only crop yield, with increasing organic carbon, you can see a lot of other ecosystem services enhanced. So looking at this relationship between organic matter and soil biological activity, microbial community, will help you understand like how this biology regulates this nutrient cycling process and ultimately support crop production. And so how do we increase microbial substrate or microbial food in the ecosystem, and then increase biological activity so that we can increase crop production, support better crop production, providing continuous supply of sufficient and nutritious food. Having kind of like we talk about food security of ourselves. So here we are talking like food security for that biological community, providing sufficient food and providing nutritious food for them through crop residue, through applying organic amendments or other biostimulants that increase biological activity in the soil. And then another is providing good soil environment, that helps in those microorganisms to regulate those processes by minimizing disturbance, by applying compost or providing residue cover in the soil, like in hot and dry environment, like in New Mexico, Arizona, this kind of environment. In summer, the temperature goes really high. Soil surface temperature even gets higher. And then what we found on our research is, if the temperature goes more than 100 degrees, in that situation, soil temperature goes more than 100 degrees, most of the biological activity kind of partially shut down. And then, you don't want to get into that situation where, the soil biology cannot work because of too hot soil environments, too high temperature. Then having residue cover or following no tillage, minimum tillage practice, that is another approach we can enhance soil biological activity. So I summarize, these practices like minimizing soil disturbance, following no-till, reduced tillage, maximizing carbon input, increasing cropping intensity and diversity, and adopting some frontier technologies like breeding for deeper, this practice, breeding deeper and larger, more recalcitrant rooting system, biofuel and biochar production and utilization, or other bio-based products that supports the soil biology. That is the way we can improve soil health, and then also increase water storage and crop water productivity in arid and semi-arid regions. So looking at different strategies, the first strategy I have been looking is there a way we can integrate cover cropping to increase microbial substrate and their activity in arid and semi-arid systems. And then when I talk, the biological activity, if we put all this biological community and organic matter into this pyramid, there is a small fraction of soil is the microbial community. This small fraction, regulate different pools of soil organic matter. Like one fraction of soil organic matter, a small portion of soil organic matter, that can decompose within a year or within less than 2 years time frame. That mostly regulate nutrient cycling processes. Nutrient availability is regulated by this fraction of organic matter where biology is most active. And then another fraction, regulate slow process of releasing nutrients, which regulate next year's or next few years biological activity, and then a slow process of nutrient cycling, so long-term fertility in soil. And then another is passive soil organic matter. It is like a money on your saving account. It really regulates long-term fertility and long-term health in the soil and the long-term biological activity. And looking at this short-term response using different cover crop combinations, you can see the fallow treatment here, and then all different cover crop treatments we used in a study. This is, I think, 4 years of cover crop application in winter wheat sorghum fallow rotation. We see all these different cover crops, increase soil active carbon or potentially mineralizable carbon, which include, microbial substrate. So microbial substrate availability is increased substantially, 20 to 83% increase in microbial activity index using these cover crops. And then some cover crops are better than other cover crops because these different plant species, when you have different species, they release different kind of chemicals in the soil. And then some chemicals help in growing a specific group of microorganisms than other group of plants. So looking at different species and their combinations, like pea and oat combination, pea and canola combination, pea, oat, and canola, 6 species mixture, including pea, oat, canola, hairy wheat, barley, and forage radish. So they have a different response in microbial activity and available soil organic matter. And then we look at overall soil health. This could be busy. Again, same set of treatment. And then we look at soil biological, physical, and chemical properties with different cover crop treatments. Look at this top couple rows. Total fungal community was increased by 15% in cover crop treatment. And mycorrhizal fungi increased by 35%. Saprophytic fungi, 12%. So this is very important. Increasing fungal component in the soil is very important with using cover crops. And then if we look at the bacterial community, you can still see small increase in bacterial component. All positive, gram-negative bacteria, gram-positive bacteria, actinobacteria total. But that, significant increase in fungal component is very important because fungal have a very good network of their hyphae that can transport nutrient from one end of the field to another end of the field or long distance. Increased phosphorus availability, increased nitrogen availability, increased micronutrient availability. So that is very important message here with increase in fungal component. If we look at organic matter component, soil organic carbon, potentially mineralizable carbon, microbial biomass carbon, all positive increase in these components. But if you look at the nitrogen component, you see these negative numbers. The cover crops utilize some of the nitrogen because these samples were collected right after cover crop termination. So that means, some of the nitrogen is tied up in root and shoot biomass of cover. And we see also enzyme activity increase, water stable aggregates, soil structure is improved. But another major component, water content is also decreased. So this nitrogen, water, 2 critical components in arid and semi-arid environment was decreased when we measure all these soil health parameters right after cover crop termination. So you might ask, like, how, what about soil water in arid and semi-arid environment? And then we did another specific experiment because on that first study, we measured all the soil health parameters only in top 6-inch soil, top 8-inch soil depth. We wanted to focus water into a deeper depth and look at the response. So we did 2 jobs. One, my graduate students look at the global data in a different region, like how these, the water dynamics work in different agroecosystems, and then how in different regions, different soil types, and different management systems. And another, we did our own experiment in 2019 and 2020 to look at these three treatments: grass brassica legume, grass brassica, and grass legume combinations, and then a fallow treatment, and then look at soil profile moisture up to 4 feet soil profile. And when we look at, let's start with this first. On this cover crop phase, in the fallow treatment, there was a little more moisture. Moisture was conserved in the fallow field. When we planted cover crop, and then when we measure soil moisture at cover crop termination, cover crop used some moisture. That cover crop depleted soil profile moisture. And then in the main crop phase, which was sorghum in this study, on this sorghum fallow field, from planting of sorghum to sorghum harvest, that storage between that was negative in the fallow field, but positive in all cover crop fields. Same way, we repeated the experiment in the 2020, and then the magnitude was different, but we see the same kind of trend. At the beginning, fallow field conserved moisture. So we look at a combined system scale from cover crop planting to sorghum harvest, and then you can see all the systems use some moisture because all crops need water to grow them, but highest amount of water was used in the fallow field. So the cover crop did not use more water. And then in the second year also, actually one of the cover crop field have a positive balance. That means there was a little bit of water storage in the system at cover crop harvest time. So it is, the message here is water is critical for adopting some of the soil health practices in water limited environment. But timing also matters. Sometimes if you measure one time, you might think cover crop use water. Some other time you think cover crop might conserve water. But this is relative. And then our global data also shows that cover crop overall reduced evapotranspiration and improved water use efficiency. The number is not that great, but water is not a major constraint to adopt some of the soil health practices, because the cover cropping is one practice. I'll go into other soil health practices in a little bit, because what that cover cropping really works is improve soil biology, improve soil structure, and then helps in water storage in main crop planting phase. Yes, it uses moisture, but when the fallow field is there, the surface was sealed. So a lot of water could not get into the soil in the fallow field when we planted sorghum. But in case of cover crop residue, soil surface was cooler, rough soil surface, and then infiltration was higher. And also when we measure soil water storage in the profile, that water storage was also higher. So supporting, having that biological activity in the soil, and then having more organic matter storage in the cover crop field, that really helped in regulating water cycle and improve water storage in the system. And we look at this microbial community response, like how that have that might have regulated. For example, we showed like the biggest increase in fungal component, increase in water storage. So I look at where is the soil health index of these different systems. This might be a little bit confusing, but what I would like to point out is, the fallow system where there is no residue. And if we look at all different cover crops, this oat cover crop had the highest biomass input, and 6 species mixture is most diverse in. And then these two systems, worked better in improving soil biology. Oat having more above ground residue, that means provided sufficient food, provided more food for microbial community. And then this provided more food and then more diversity in substrate, microbial substrate, or more diverse materials per consumption. And then that lead this diversity or more food was directly linked to the fungal component, because the oat and pea oat, sorry, this was a six species mixture. I think the legend changed, but this was a 6 species mixture. That 6 species mixture was had the highest fungal component. So that fungus have some relationship to improving soil water storage, improving overall soil health, and then improving soil structure, so that it improved overall soil biology and production. And then on the same experiment, we also look at looking at soil biology, looking at soil water storage, looking at the above ground crop production, improving. Also, we look at the relationship between weed and cover crop. And you can see that was done in 3 years, looking at 2016, 2017, and 2018. On all these years, what we could see is when we have more cover crop or ground cover, improved better ground cover, and more biomass of cover crops, weed biomass was lower. So with increasing cover crop biomass, weed biomass decreased. Now the relationship was a little bit different, because these years there was interannual variability in weather. The response of weed and then cover crop varied with that difference in precipitation in different years. But overall, you can see on all 3 years, trend is negative. So, when you increase soil health, adopting soil health practices, this applies not only to the cover cropping, but also applies to other soil health practices, leaving residue on the surface, having a better ground cover with crop rotation. That could all apply on this system, or you apply amendments, establish crop, and then have a better canopy coverage early on. That helps in suppressing weed. Then sometimes that having fungal community, they help to colonize some of the weed seed, and then they help to decrease the weed emergence. So that way we could see, we did not look at those specific processes, but when we look at the weed biomass and weed community, overall improvement in weed suppression was better with high biomass of cover crops or high ground cover with these different cover cropping species. Then now I will move to different another strategy. I have been working to improve soil health on this region. This study looking at crop rotation and diversification, how different crop rotations work, how that manipulate soil biology and improve soil health. On this study, we look at conventional system, organic system, and then reduced tillage system. So in the conventional system, conventional fertilizer, like a chemical fertilizer, was applied. More typical crop rotation was adopted. And then organic system, we used composted beef cattle manure on organic system, and reduced tillage system applied conventional fertility management, but reduced soil disturbance. The tillage intensity and frequency was reduced on the system. Look at, this is the first year data, pretty much consistent, a little bit more microbial biomass in reduced tillage system as compared to other. But if we look at the statistics, those numbers were not much difference. It is just like a variability. But in the 4th year, when we used, the compost or manure in the system, which provided more microbial food, and then used, biological measures to manage pest, insect pest. Also, in this system, that had the highest amount of microbial biomass. And then those systems, not only microbial biomass, we also see the higher microbial substrate, like dissolved organic materials in the soil. We extracted soil organics from the soil and then measured the organic content in the soil. Those dissolved organic carbon, DOC, was higher. And then substrate carbon to nitrogen ratio. That means, if there is a low carbon to nitrogen ratio, that helps in increasing bacterial community, and then relatively higher carbon to nitrogen ratio, it improve a fungal community. And on this system, this both increased content and then balanced carbon to nitrogen ratio, increased potential soil respiration, ultimately improve soil organic carbon storage or carbon sequestration. And then also, a microbial biomass and community structure was changed. More fungal dominated system was developed by adopting organic, and then that change was also observed a little bit in a reduced tillage system. So, first we talk about cover cropping strategy. Here we are talking, crop rotation. But in both systems, what you can see common is, improving microbial substrate, microbial food through either cover cropping strategy or crop rotation strategy, or using organic amendments, applying organic amendments in the organic system that overall boosted soil biology and then improved organic matter storage, and then that helped in increasing overall soil health and ecosystem health. Same way, another crop rotation study, I did in another experiment where we look at, native grass, and then we compare this native grass system, undisturbed grass, as a reference system. And then we look at wheat pea rotation with no tillage, wheat pea rotation with conventional tillage, and then winter wheat fallow system. And you can see specifically on this, winter wheat pea rotation on the surface soil, you can see improvement. For example, this is, soil carbon mineralization on ambient temperature. On the ambient temperature, wheat pea rotation even have a more biological activity or carbon mineralization compared to native grass system. In the tillage system, it is a little bit less. And then when we simulated, hot temperature, like this is a 30 degrees C, more about like 100 degree Fahrenheit. In this case, native grass and wheat pea rotation have a similar kind of carbon mineralization condition. And then it boosted with higher temperature, but these two systems were not as compared to grass system. But the message here, this having a legume or having more nitrogen in the system, nitrogen contributing system, their biological activity is enhanced as good as native plant community. And then in that situation, that is another way to improve soil health. I have soil biological community data, soil organic matter storage. I did not want it to go on all those, just wanted to give you a snapshot in different cropping systems in this dry region. Improving biology is very helpful. Then another strategy, I have been looking, I might not be able to go on all the community, but I wanted to show some important data. For example, this livestock integrated system, here we compared strip tillage without livestock integration, no tillage without livestock integration, and conventional tillage, but grazed with cattle grazing. So that grazed system have highest amount of organic matter storage, even better than no strip tillage and no tillage system. You see, lower soil depth below 20 centimeter, below 8 inch. We don't see much difference. Still, there is some difference, but on the top foot or top 8-inch depth, you see livestock integrated system have highest amount of organic carbon and then better microbial colonization on those systems as compared to non-livestock integrated system. And then, how this cattle manure. Now, I just wanted to give you some perspective. because we have data, but I did not wanted to show all the data. But this is the summary. When you apply cattle manure or compost, it can increase organic matter storage. We just saw the data. Increase microbial activity, increase nitrogen availability, increase other nutrients, including micronutrients, and then also improve soil physical structure, improve moisture storage capacity, and then reduce, compaction, improve other mesofauna, and then ultimately improve overall crop production and then productivity of the system. And I'm looking at livestock integration in the field, but also look at what happens if we just apply compost. No grazing is possible on your field. And then we did that test using different amount of compost. For example, this one is without compost. This is a sorghum root without compost, and then 3-ton compost, 6-ton compost, 9-ton compost, 12 and 15-ton compost per acre rate. And you can see, I don't need to show the data. You can see the root density on these different treatments. It is almost like linear increase in root density with increasing organic content in the soil. So that means when you have more organic material, more the biological activity, not only microbial component, the plant root itself grows better on those systems. And then with increasing root density, when the root is spread to the deeper and wider area, it captures nutrients from the broader range of soil environment. And then overall crop production is higher in those systems where you have more active, more root content, and then more biological material. And we discussed earlier, increasing input is one component, and another component is minimizing soil disturbance. So when you provide, support biology, like increase fungal component, if you do repeated tillage, those fungal hyphae which is growing in the soil, that growth is disturbed, and then fungal hyphae are broken apart. When you have in that system, repeated tillage, that system, release more nutrients and more carbon in the form of carbon dioxide. So more impact on the environment, induce erosion, and then also break down that organic matter faster, and overall organic matter storage and biological activity is disturbed. In case of minimum or no-till system, where tillage is minimized, that biology can be active all around the year, and then continuous supply of nutrient is possible on those systems. So that by regulating that biological activity overall around the year, nutrient supply is better, and then overall crop production and soil health is improved in no-tillage system. But also, we had a field day, and then the farmer asked me a question. Yes, improving biology, adopting no-tillage is good, but in the dry environment, sometimes it is very difficult to work in the no-tillage system. So can we do some kind of tillage, in certain years? So we did another study. How much tillage is too much? How frequently we can go and then till? And looking at the experiment, we had a long-term conventional tillage, no tillage, and strip tillage plots. And in 2019, we put one stubble mulch tillage in long-term no-till field, and compared with conventional tillage, one-time stubble mulch tillage, and then other conventional tillage. Look at the data. This is again a busy slide. I just wanted to show you, as compared to conventional tillage, occasional tillage in 4, 5, 6 years. If you do one light tillage, that might not have that big impact on your soil health. It will instead it will enhance, mix that residue on the surface and enhance a little bit of nitrogen availability in the soil. Other than that, we did not see any negative impact in soil carbon storage, overall soil health, and then a little bit improvement in yield was a positive response of occasional tillage. But that doesn't mean, every year if we do frequent repeated tillage and then heavy tillage equipment, that shows significant decrease in what organic matter storage, water storage potential. So our typical conventional tillage is not supporting improvement in soil health, but some occasional tillage, probably in 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, if you need to mix your soil a little bit, we did not see much impact in semi-arid system of eastern New Mexico. So you might want to find more on your particular system, how much frequency and how much intensity of tillage can be done. We continued this tillage, and then this year, instead of using stubble mulch tillage, I'm using double disc to till those offset disc to till those soil, and then look at the response. In a couple of years, I will be able to share that response, like how the organic matter breakdown happens on those soil, and then impact on overall soil health. But we had another study with this tillage system, conventional tillage, strip tillage, no tillage, and then in another piece of land, we added some cover crop in no-till and strip till field, and then look at surface organic matter in top 6 inch. So organic matter storage was higher with no tillage, strip tillage, and no tillage. And then when we added cover crop, that benefit was even higher, but this data is only from top 6 inch. What happens in the conventional tillage, sometimes that residue is turned around, then you might see a little more organic matter below 6 inch or 8 inch, whatever your tillage depth, you might see more organic carbon. So it is a little bit biased toward no tillage and conventional tillage because it is only on the surface. But overall, in the surface soil, we could see improvement in carbon storage with no tillage and cover cropping practice. And in summary, I give some perspective on tillage, some perspective on other soil health management practices. So overall, what I find from these different studies is identifying crops or cover crops that works in water limited environment as those species which improve water use efficiency. So we need to find those species. We learn a lot about timing, planting, species selection. So we need to take care of those components. And another important component is improving soil biology to improve soil health, crop production, and water conservation. So if you have a right species planted on your crop rotation crops, apply right amendments, right amount of fertilizer, that really help in regulating soil biological processes, which helps in storing part of the organic matter, improve soil structure, which helps in improving water cycle, also improve carbon cycle and then nutrient cycling process, and overall soil health is improved. With that, I would like to stop here. I'd like to thank you guys for listening me, my graduate students for supporting me on all this work, and then funding agency. With that, I will be happy to take any questions if you have, and then time allows.
Thank you, Dr. Ghimire. Are there any quick questions we can ask right at this moment?
2 additional cover crops that he might try: winter oats and spelt. Done both these, and you may find then after 1 to 2 times, they're easy to maintain, easy to, with the help of AgriEnergy, to break it down for you in the spring. But you may also find that they will help loosen phosphorus in the ground. Second thing is, on your carbon aspect of your speech, you're right on target, but a good thing to think about, and I have done this, is when you spray mix something of a carbon nature such as blackstrap molasses or just plain sugar with your mixture. Try it in a bowl or jar first to make sure it's compatible with what else you're mixing it with. But I find that that helps greatly in adding carbon back to the soil. You can also use that blackstrap molasses as a surfactant for foliar spray. Another good thing to use.
Yeah, so did you catch that, Doctor?
That's
You know, if someone can repeat, that would be
So
easy.
yeah, the main points he was suggesting is, at least in this part of the world, we look into oats and spelt a lot as cover crops, and then use various biologicals to break them down. And then the second part of that, using things like molasses to stimulate that growth, that activity, and really get it moving along. Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree on those components. You know, the residue breakdown is challenging, and then supporting something to improve a breakdown of residue, that organic matter, you know, it release nutrients faster.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you very much for joining us and taking this time. Let's give him a